So tonight's session is a coffee and cake, virtual coffee and cake catch up. We have a guest speaker who is going to introduce his himself and his journey and what level of qualification he has. And this is just a general Q&A at the end. It could be to do with kind of progression, or it could be development, or anything officials related, keeping a bit of a happy kind of positive note to things, but also a supportive one at that. So I will introduce myself for those that don't have the misfortune. Oh, sorry, I mean have the fortune of knowing me. My name's Mark Ritchie. I am the Technical Officials Development Manager for England Athletics. In short, that means everything to do with officials. Um, my other home country lead contact is on the call. Shona, would you like to introduce yourself and where you're from?
Okay, good evening. My name is Shona Malcolm. I'm the Recruitment Development Officer with Scottish Athletics, and Mark and I work very closely together, along with Zoe from Wales and Declan from Northern Ireland. So again, any questions that you have, please feel free to ask any one of us any questions, and we'll do our best to answer. So thank you for attending tonight.
Thank you very much, Shona. Um, and I will, without further ado, I will give way to the floor to our guest speaker, who is a shy individual. But I will let the individual introduce himself. Rob, would you like to take yourself off mute, share your screen, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mark, and good evening, everybody. And Mark, Shona, thank you for the invite. Right, let's see if I can do the clever technical thing and share my screen. This is where it will go completely wrong. You don't want to see my emails, so let's share that one. And then I should be able to that. Right, somebody give me the thumbs up that I can see my first slide. Excellent, thank you very much. Right, well, as Mark said, I am your guest speaker for your misfortune, and I've been invited along this evening to talk about my journey from assistant official to international official. For those of you who don't know me, I know some of your faces, I don't know others, but I know some of your names. For those I've met, hello again. For those that don't know me, I'm a Scottish-based technical official. I'm one of the 5 silver World Athletic referees now in the UK. As I say, hopefully what I can tell you a little bit about how I got there this evening. My journey, as they say, it's the buzzword, and everybody has a journey these days, from Strictly Come Dancing to wherever. Everybody's on a journey. So I'll tell you a bit about that, how I got to, as I say, to be a World Athletics referee, talk a little bit about my experiences and the learning I've taken on board along the way, talk about some of the highlights and indeed 1 or 2 lowlights. And then by way of finishing off, I'll talk a little bit about the skill set that I see is required to be a technical official. And then at the end, if there's any questions and answers, then happy to answer them. If there's anything as we go along you want to ask a question about, and if you want to put anything in the chat, I'm sure Mark can pick that up at the end of my session. So let's get started. Where did it all begin for me? Well, zero interest in athletics as a young person, but like a number of you, I came in to athletics as an official through my children. My daughter went to high school, was noted by her PE teacher to be a good runner, and had suggested that she go along to the local athletics club. So off we trotted in 2006 for her to join the athletics club, got involved in the club, started assisting at meetings, raking sandpits, retrieving shot putts, whatever needed to be done for the club, and then decided I quite enjoyed that role. So would take it further and develop myself and take the technical officials qualifications. Now, when I look back at my record, the first course I did was actually the level 2 track official. So I guess things were slightly different back then, and you were sort of, if needs be, you could go straight on to the level 2. So I did that level 2 exam, decided I'd concentrate on track, as that was my daughter's preferred discipline, was the track. So I thought I'll be a track official. From there, I started then to do meetings at local level. Be they league meetings, open graded meetings, schools meetings, and eventually it moved on to have so a little bit of experience that allowed me to get my first Scottish Athletics Championship appointment in April 2008. Now, I still remember walking into that officials' room that Saturday morning in Edinburgh and feeling completely out of my depth, looking across at a room of busy officials that all knew what they were doing, all knew each other, chatting away. I felt quite sort of lonely and unsupported. That said, I was soon brought into the body of the kirk, as they say, and people started to speak to me and ask me what was happening, what I was doing there, find out who I was. So that's something we should all take on board as we go to these meetings. If we see a new face in our officials' room that looks slightly lost, engage with them. Ask them what they're doing, ask them how they're doing, what they're there for, and make that first contact. It is, as I'm sure you've experienced yourselves, a very lonely place when you go along to your first meeting. Developed myself through that 2008, 2011, and I'm sure if you speak to the discipline head at the time, I thought I knew everything very quickly and was ready to advance myself. I certainly now know that I didn't know everything, and I think you learn as you go along, and where you might think you know things, you don't, and you should take your time, learn off others, and make sure it's not just about knowing the rules, it's about engaging with others, asking those what seem like silly questions. If you don't know something, ask the question, find out. That way you could develop yourself. And as the slide says there, by 2011, I'd attained the level 3 track official appointment. Again, still working at vast majority of Scottish meetings, very little UK appointments, working across all levels in Scotland, right down to the club championship and club open graded meetings, just enjoying myself doing that role. 2012 saw my first UK appointment, and similar to my first Scottish appointment at Meadowbank, the same nerves and the same uneasiness walking in to the officials' room at Manchester for the Paralympics World Cup. We were given nice white polo shirts at the time, I seem to remember, which I thought I looked the bee's knees in. But again, it's a strange environment, so if you see new faces, speak to them, get to know them. I was fortunate throughout that period to be working with a lot of highly experienced and knowledgeable officials who knew exactly what they were doing and were able to support me in my development. The level 4 track qualification came in 2013, and then my first big appointment, if you like, was the Commonwealth Games Glasgow 2014. Now, despite my accent, I am Scottish by birth, born just outside Glasgow, so this was a home event for me, my home stadium. And I still remember the pride and honour I felt walking into Hampden, set up as an athletic stadium. What a fabulous event it was. Again, the nerves, the learning, everything was there, but I wasn't on my own. This is the track team from Glasgow. So, as you'll know from your own experiences in athletics, it's not a solo occupation being a technical official. You're part of a team, and working within a team, knowing your team, enjoying time with your team is part of that process. And certainly they were long in Glasgow. They were long, busy days. The atmosphere in Glasgow was amazing. The noise, I think it was possibly the design of the stadium with the roof, and the fact that the athletics track was raised off nearly 2 meters off the football pitch ground to fit it in, ended up with it being a bowl of noise, and the noise on some of those evenings was quite immense. Possibly the low light of the experience was the last Friday evening. The weather had been glorious for the whole event, but on the last Friday evening, it decided we were going to get typical Glasgow summer weather, and it absolutely poured down. Myself and Jill Freeman were boarding bell for the women's 10,000 meters at the start of the event, and Jill and I cuddled up together underneath our ponchos to do the boarding bell, and basically got the PISS ripped out of us for the rest of the evening. And every time I saw anybody after that, we looked like Darby and Joan cuddled up under the ponchos. But we got the job done. Highlight potentially was that same evening. I was in charge of takeover 3 for the relays, and a certain Mr. Usain Bolt was on the last leg for the Jamaicans. Athletes all came out. I'm carefully putting them in their lanes, making sure their marks are as they should be for track, trying not to think about who I was dealing with, but just treat it as another athletics meeting. And then the organisers decided they were going to have 2 medal presentations before the event actually took place. So it was a case of herd all the athletes off the track, 1 medal on back on the track, another medal ceremony, off the track, off they went again. The thing that struck me at the time was how laid back and jovial Usain Bolt was. He was about to run the final leg in the relays, but he was laughing and joking and willing to chat about anything and was winding up the crowd between these medal presentations. So that was my Glasgow experience. It was a great one, and one that I hoped I would be able to repeat at some future time in my development. Which takes me on a bit longer. The next big event for me, if you like, was the World Athletics Championships in the Olympic Stadium in London. This was followed closely by the Paras, so it was some very busy weeks, double sessions most days, quite tiring. You had to keep your focus throughout those events. But again, it's a team effort. So there you have, that's our London team on the picture there. So it's not exactly, we're not exactly on your own when you're official. So again, it's all part of that team ethos, working as a team, firing off each other, learning off each other, supporting each other. Very important as we go through athletics, whatever level we're on. I'm sure you'll recognize some of the faces on that picture there. So London done. That I thought that's me done. That's me have my luck within athletics. That's that's the biggies done. And I guess as we know, there's more coming. And over the piece, we have been very fortunate in the UK to have so many big global meetings within the country. So I've been fortunate in the time I've had to develop myself and be involved. 2018 at UKA decided to put forward the level 5 exam. I was invited to sit that, and that was a 2-day training session and followed by another weekend with exams in Birmingham. And again, I gained that level 5 officials qualification, which is more of a, as you'll know, is more of a global rather than a single discipline qualification. You need to know across all disciplines. I had been working as well as track. I had been working as photo finish over the prior piece, so that gave me a sort of cross-discipline knowledge. And I'd certainly say if you're developing yourself, certainly consider going for more than one discipline. You'll have your prime discipline, but if it suits you, then pick a second discipline, pick a third discipline, experience all the disciplines, because that can only help your general knowledge and understanding of how the athletics event works. So rolling on from that, we have the World Indoor Championships. Again, another huge global meeting held in the UK that I was fortunate to be appointed call room referee. That said, didn't have the most officious of starts. As you'll see there, if any of you remember the Beast from the East over that period, this picture on the left here is the view out my bedroom window when I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning to catch my flight to Birmingham. We did get to the airport. We went through into the departure lounge. Our flight was cancelled. We were sent back out again. We went in again. The flight was cancelled. We came back out again. And surprisingly, we ended up sitting in a coffee shop out on the land side, if you like, of the airport. The three technical officials that were meant to be on the flight, alongside a couple of Scottish athletes who were also meant to be on the flight. So we sat and chatted and drank tea with Laura Muir and Grant Penderleith while we waited to find out what was happening with flights and how we were getting to Birmingham. Athletes were well looked after. UKA picked them up by car, decided to chauffeur them all the way to Birmingham, whereas us technical officials, we were told, I'll go home and we'll work out what we're going to do for you over the coming days. That said, it was 48 hours later, we managed to get a car to Carlisle, a train to Birmingham, and I arrived for the World Indoors 48 hours late, having missed the first session. And joined, again, another marvellous team that I was fortunate to work with. Here's our call room team from the 2018 World Indoors. Again, I'm sure there's faces there you recognise. I quickly got up to speed with how things were working, was taken into the team and able to assist them on the role within the call room. And potentially we'll go to another low point now, which was the last night of competition. As I say, as an official, you have to expect the unexpected, but I don't think any of us expected the last night we faced. So as the Beast from the East faded and the thaw set in, the pipes burst. The pipes thawed and burst. the lift shafts flooded, and all the lifts went out of action. Now, those of you that have potentially worked at the indoor arena in Birmingham will know that the warm-up area in the cool room is 5 flights of stairs in the dungeons, and the competitive area is far higher up. So it was a case of, what do we do now? All our timings are based on the lift. The lifts weren't working. So as a team, we had to change all the times. We had to work out the times with the event management team, and then inform the athletes in the cool room, no, you're going up earlier, don't put your spikes on. There'll be a final call that we've made upstairs, and you'll have time there to recover your breath and get ready to compete from the final call on the top floor. I wasn't doing step count at the time, but I think if I had been, I think there would have been pretty immense number of steps and number of stairs we all did that night, running up and down the stairs with the various groups of athletes. So learning to self, be prepared for the unexpected. You never know what life's going to throw at you, or in fact what officiating is going to throw at you. So let's carry on with my journey. And the next big event for me, and before I go into this, the big event, it's important to say that it's not just about the big events. The big events are what I've highlighted here, but we're all working at grassroots level, at national level, at doing the UK stuff, and that's equally as important, if not important. Far more of us will be on those meetings than on these big events, if you like. But the next big event for me was the European Indoor Championships. Again, that's the track team on the top of the top picture there. Again, another team that I'm working in. It's all part of that team ethos. And my home city again, the Emirates Arena. It was great. I don't remember too much going wrong, so it must have all gone swimmingly well. So we'd obviously worked well as a team and got the event delivered. But being again in Glasgow at that level of meeting was great. We then move on to the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. Again, just as you go along, you're learning all the time. You never know, nobody ever knows everything. There's always something you can pick up and learn. But certainly the Commonwealth Games for me, working again on the track, that was my first time working on a marathon. The track team were also covering the marathon event. So on the Saturday morning, we covered the refreshments. Well, I was put on the refreshment station for the marathon. First time I've worked on a marathon, and one of the things I remember is when we walked from our accommodation down to the marathon start point. Because of the time the marathon started, we were walking through Birmingham city centre at about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. Because we'd had to be on site at a particular time. We decided we'd walk down, and to be walking through Birmingham dressed as a technical official while the nightclubs are kicking out and people are going into their kebab shops to buy their kebabs. Some of the jovial abuse we got was somewhat near the knuckle, and certainly not to be repeated on a call as such as tonight. But the marathon itself was another learning point for me. When we were told when we went out in the bus that refreshment station would all be set up for you, you just needed to man it and make sure the rules were followed for the refreshment. We were dropped off at the 5K point to find right at the side of the track there was a whole stack of barriers and tables, and nothing was set up. So it was a case of, right, we'll need to set this up ourselves. So discussion amongst ourselves, we set it up as we thought was right, and it worked on the day. But again, expect the unexpected. This was thrown at us at the last minute. After the Commonwealth Games had finished, home again, and then it was the World Athletics referee program that raised its ugly head. I'm sure some of you may know, but some of you may not. So I've got a few slides to summarize what was going on here. So World Athletics decided that TOEX wasn't what they wanted to do. So they got all the clever brains of World Athletics in a room, sat down for ages and ages, and decided that instead of TOEX, it would be the World Athletics Referee Education and Certification System, WAREX. And then once they'd agreed this and published it, somebody pointed out, well, what about the acronym WAR? So I found myself now as a WARS, and the gold referees are now WARGs, which, as far as I'm concerned, is something from Lord of the Rings, but I'm not exactly sure. But anyway, there you are. We're all WARS now. And WARs and WARGs and WARBs, I suppose, for our bronze people. But that bronze level, I guess, is important, and it's a new level they put in. Why did they do it? I can hear you screaming over the presentation. Why did they do it? Well, this is why they said they did it. I'll just. I guess the first thing really to point out is that first bullet point. This is a education program that's based from grassroots through to global level. So it's meant to take us from our very beginnings right through to that global stage. The second bullet point around the gender and regional balance is possibly something that in Europe anyway is a disadvantage to us. Europe is certainly highly peripheralated with good quality officials, and the number of World Athletics referees, bronze, gold, silver, and gold, is extensive in Europe, whereas other areas don't have so many. I was told that Africa currently only have one gold World Athletics referee. So when they're appointing to World Athletics events, a case of, right, we need to have athletics referees from every continent, therefore this one gold referee in Africa gets appointed to every meeting, whereas opportunities in Europe are going to be less. Particularly as a silver referee, I've only had one appointment as yet in Europe as a technical delegate in the 2 years I've been a silver referee. I haven't been appointed to a referee's role. Nothing this summer in Europe, so it's going to be a few and far between. And when it comes to the bronze level, I think the problems are going to be, even worse, because we're going to have even more bronze levels. Whether bronze level officials will see anything at a European level, I don't know. It's certainly something that I'm not sure how they'll deal with it. The third bullet point was a new one to me, about the avoid of event manipulation was the reason for appointing World Athletics referees. And it's not something I'm aware of and have come across it in the UK, but apparently it's quite prevalent in some other areas of the world, whereas the local officials will favour their local athletes. So that one of the ideas of WAREX is that there'll be representation from other countries to ensure there's none of that event manipulation. And a lot of online education now, rather than, which works, I guess, saves all that traveling. But again, you need to be slightly able to work with the technology and be happy with it before you're able to do those online qualification stuff. And just by way of a final summary of WAREX, here it is all in one table apparently. And the only thing I'll say is, if you look at the gold level, they're saying that somebody could be a gold level referee by the age of 27. I would suggest that's somewhat unrealistic, and I'd be very surprised if anybody at the age of 27 had enough experience and knowledge to work on a World Athletics global event. But that's the minimums they say. So back to what I've been doing. 2024, the World Indoor Athletics Championships. Call room referee again for my sins. Again in Glasgow, and that's the call room, and that's about all I saw of the whole championship. Just the call room, wasn't on the field of play at all. As a technical official, as a referee, I felt somewhat hampered by World Athletics in the event. I wasn't allowed to have that referee's authority within the call room. There'd been an issue with the information that had gone out to the nations around spikes before the event. I was informed by World Athletics not to, if there was any spike issues, just to let them go through and advise, but report upwards afterwards. So tried to work with that as best I could. And when the athletes were coming in for the first round of competition, I was able to advise them, well, those spikes aren't legal. You should have different spikes. And through working with the countries and getting that education out there and working with TIC, the information was percolated out, and every nation but one for the finals came with the appropriate spikes on their shoes. I'm not going to mention the country that came in with the inappropriate spikes, but when I told World Athletics they're still refusing to wear the right spikes, I was told, well, you just need to let them run, and we'll pick it up afterwards. If they picked it up afterwards, I don't know. But as I was slightly frustrated at the end of the competition, I felt I hadn't been given my role. But you'll find when you get to this level of competition, there is a little bit of politics with a small p involved, and you need to go with it. That was my view from the World Indoor Athletics Championships. But thankfully, I had the European Small States Championships in Gibraltar, which had a slightly nicer view to take me there. This was my first technical delegate appointment. It was a last-minute appointment, as I was going as a track official anyway, but was well looked after by Gibraltar Athletics and had a very enjoyable 4 days in Gibraltar. A lot of learning because it was thrown in at the deep end as technical delegate, but was able to work through it, deal with what I could, and again, work with a good team to deliver the event. So that was where I was at the end of 24. But where do we go now? Well, I can tell you what I was doing last week, and that was the Lanarkshire Track Relay Championships. Two qualified track officials, 3 qualified starters, no photo finish, changeovers manned by volunteers. We delivered an event at the level for Lanarkshire. Athletes from under 11 to seniors all had a good event. All enjoyed the day, all learned about athletics. Some of them was their first ever time on an athletics track. The volunteers who were doing the changeover, we engaged with them. We tried to get some of those, those are our new technical officials coming through. So it's that grassroots activity which I continue to thrive in and which I continue to enjoy. These highlights here are just something I've done, but the vast majority of what I've done and what I've learned is based on that grassroots levels learning, because that's where you've got to think off your feet and work as a team, because that's when you get you've got very few technical officials there. But apart from the local stuff and the Scottish stuff, and for yourselves, there's also a very busy period coming forward for across the UK. Next year we have the Commonwealth Games and the European Championships in the UK, and London have put a bid in for the 2029 World Athletics Championships. So I've got no idea what I'll be doing, if anything, at any of these events, or if even the 2029 World Athletics Champs will happen. But certainly they're on the horizon. There's no reason why you folks can't be thinking about these things and working towards them as well. So that's me. That's what I've done. That's what's to come. But just before I finish, I'll just talk about the skill sets I see is required. This is very much a personal view of mine based on what I've learned, what I've done over the period. But let's start with what the dear old World Athletics say about the expected profile of a World Athletics referee. So here's 6 bullet points that they put out in a presentation when they were first bringing in the World Athletics referees. So absolutely, knowledge of World Athletics competition and technical rules. We need to know that. They go to great lengths to prove that we know the rules by sitting us on 3-4 hours online exams where you can't leave the room for that length of time. Not much fun. But yes, so you need to know the technical rules. But what I also pick out of these slides is these points. And to me, they aim more at your personal skills, your team building, how you work with others, how you manage yourself, your sort of the soft skills, if you like, about being an official. So it's not all about knowing the rules and being able to apply the rules. It's about being that team worker, that team builder, that team leader as needs be, to work with others and be able to adapt and manage those complex situations is where I see it. So what I had a quick think, if you like. I had a quick brainstorm and put a few words down as to where I see the skill sets that might be useful to think about as a technical official as you develop, and what's good, what's bad, what you need to be thinking about. And just looking at those 2 bullet points about having difficult conversations and de-escalating conflict, I shall relate a short story about the British UK Championships last summer, where I was NTD. Now, I was aware that there was an athlete who'd tripped and fallen in the 1500 meters heat. He put in a protest. The protest was reviewed by the jury. The jury went back to the athlete and said, "I'm sorry, it's been seen as a racing incident. We've reviewed what video footage is available to us. We review it as a racing incident, so therefore you're not getting reinstated." To which I now understand that the athlete was less than happy. Very angry, very aggressive tone in voice, some effing and jeffing, as it was noted to me, he was saying. But he was, and then he was at the entrance to the officials' room in Manchester, shouting and doing the similar language to the meeting manager. So I got a message over the radio. He'd asked to speak to somebody more senior within the team to explain why his protest had been thrown out. So I leave the field of play as where I was meant to be based. I go in, I speak to the chair of the jury briefly, find out what the story is, and I walk across the warm-up area to meet this gentleman and his coach, who are standing at the entrance to the officials' room. He then goes off on one on me, if you like, no bad language, thankfully, or it would have had a different outcome, but certainly very irate tones, very loud, very in my face. I want this, I want that, I want the other. He eventually stopped and I said, "Hello, my name's Rob. I'm the NTD. How can I help you?" It completely threw him off his tracks. He didn't know what to say. And he then came back to me in a more level tone. Again, he was, like, so then I then went on to explain the process, what had happened, and that basically there was nothing more to be done today, but I would go back and speak to the jury of appeal. So, and I'd report back to him. So that I did. I went off. I had another chat with the jury. I later met up with the coach and explained the situation and why that appeal hadn't been upheld. But that one tactic of just pausing, saying hello, and introducing yourself when this guy's gone off, and instead of escalating your own voice to his level, it's something that's maybe worth considering and using as a skill or a tool of your own if you find yourself having to de-escalate a conflict. Don't escalate yourself. Keep your emotions nice and calm and try and de-escalate things. Right, just before I finish, I was just a couple of slides on a European Athletics Referees Forum I was on last year, to which they brought along 2 sports psychologists, and a lot of the sessions were based on the psychology around how we work as officials and how we take decisions and communications. So I say, if you had longer, there's a lot more to learn here, but it's just something to think about decision making. We've got the definition of decision making there. What exactly is it? 2 different ways of making decisions. Accurate decisions, obviously, by the rule book. Your adequate decisions, you're maybe applying something a bit more viable, and as an official, you will tend to change from an accurate decision maker to adequate decision as you get more stressful. Neither is right or wrong, as long as your adequate decisions are always applied in the same way. They don't need, there is times for both, but it just gets you thinking, and how you work as an official. It's those soft skills, that psychology, those learning, talking to others. Similarly, around communication, what is communication was the thing we went through. The 4 years model. I'd suggest reading about the 4 years model. It was certainly interesting to me. I'm not going to go into any detail here. It's just to give you some thoughts as to things you might want to think about. And I think these slides are going to be shared afterwards, so you can look through them in slow time if needs be. And that non-verbal communication. How do we communicate? It's not just about talking. It's about everything else around it. And one exercise we did do, which I will share with you in a bit more detail, is the diamond of communication. These 9 points are the way we can potentially communicate. We were split into small groups and then asked to rate them within this diamond, from the 9 activities, 1 being the most important to 5 being what you thought was the least important as far as communicating goes. Fair to say there's no right or wrong answers. And it was just a discussion point for after we'd all got broken into groups, and I don't think no 2 groups or no 2 individuals had everything in the same order. There's other people that thought various points were different thing, but just something that was useful as a learning point for me. So yes, so I'm still learning every day, no matter how long I've been in this game. I think that brings me nicely to the end of what I've got to say. If there's any questions directly for me, then happy to answer. I don't know if there's anything in the chat, Mark. I'll stop sharing if you like.
We've got a couple of questions. You're not getting off scot-free. So, question from Rich. Hi, Rob. Great to hear your story. Thank you. Where would you say you excelled through your journey? Judgment, soft skills, knowledge, or something else?
I think where I've excelled, did you say?
Yes.
That's a big word. I don't think I've excelled. I see myself as I've been fortunate to get where I am. I go out there and officiate every weekend, and I don't see myself doing anything particularly different from any other official I come across. But I think that for me, it's those soft skills, those people skills. Everybody knows the rules. Everybody can apply a rule. Everybody can judge where the shot put's landed or what order an athlete's finished in. It's those to me, it's those soft skills about knowing how to deal with others. Maybe it's about dealing with the pressures and the stresses, and in that sort of environment. And I sometimes reflect back that maybe before I retired, my job as a paramedic in the NHS for 38 years is maybe somewhere where I've picked up some of those soft skills. If you're dealing with that sort of stuff day in, day out, then athletics is a joy. But certainly people skills and soft skills for me are that priority.
Yeah, completely echo that. And another question, what excites you about technology in our sport from an official's perspective? Anything you'd recommend we look out for or learn from?
I guess I would like to think that, I guess to an extent, technology worries me, not because it is so good now that, you see it now on major events. We've got less and less actual officials because technology is doing the job that the officials did, from your VDM to your EDM to, to now the chips in all your runners. Do we actually now need people doing lap charts at these big events because the chips are so good? So what excites me about technology is how it can support officials, but it also worries me that it will, the official, him or herself, will become less relevant. I'd like to think that there'll always be a role for official, but maybe not so many
Yeah.
because of the technology. I think that'll only develop more and more as we move forward.
I suppose I have a question of my own, in terms of, there's, we've got all levels of officials on tonight's call, and you've emphasized that literally, you start as a team, you end as a team at each meeting. How important would you say that kind of wider support process in terms of people developing within their level, and then also kind of those who are, wishing to progress, I suppose where I'm getting at is there's no difference to that kind of application of support. Would you say that's the case?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think at every event you should, working as your team, you start together, you have your briefing, you work through the day. I'd like to think the majority of teams are debriefing as well and learning off each other at the end of an event. If you get to the end of a league meeting and everybody's disappeared as soon as the last race or last event's done. But to have that reset or have that time to gather together and think, what did we learn off each other today? What went well? What didn't go so well? What could we do different next time? And I think if we can keep that ethos going at meetings, then that will help us all develop.
I think, I completely echo what you said. It's quite ironic that in the background of your screen there is a poster that says, I want to believe.
I
Um,
do.
and I think that's from me, personally speaking, and I'm sure Shona, would agree on this, that everybody's journey is different. But I would say on a personal level, that just somebody or another official or an athlete or a coach randomly kind of passing you or kind of just walking past or after an event saying, "Oh, I thought you did a great job," or "Thanks for that, I really appreciate it," or "You did a really good job there." You could actually kind of, further kind of improve your skill set by doing X. It's helped me tremendously as an
Mhm.
official on a personal basis, and I'm sure Shona would, echo that statement. Any kind of thoughts or questions for our presenter, Shona?
No, I mean, I'd like to thank Rob for his presentation. I think it was very inspirational, and I think it opens up, the floor for any official to say that it is a place you can get to if that's what your aspirations are. The bronze level referee now is open to expressions of interest from UK, and if that's somewhere you want to go, then please take that journey. It can be very rewarding. It can be very frustrating. It can be very exciting. But there's lots of learning, and you do meet some very, very nice people from around the world as you travel on your journey. I remember Rob and I sat the level 5 exam together, and as we travelled up and down to Birmingham in the car, asking each other questions, because Rob's expertise is track and mine's is field, so he would ask me field questions and I would ask him track questions. So that communication and sharing with others, sharing your experiences is one of the most important things that you can do. And don't be shy to share that and learn from each other. As I say, and Rob's done a fantastic job and got to the level that he's at and had, some of the accolades and being given the opportunities to go and officiate at some of the highest level events. And it's certainly a fantastic experience, and one that anyone can get to if they put their mind to it and put the work in. But you will learn your trade at the grassroots. That's where you'll make a lot of your decisions, which will help you when you do get to the international level. The decisions are the same. There's just a bit more pressure because there's TV and everybody else watching. But when you're looking at a disqualification on a 1500, at a championship or at a league match, it's the same as an international. Just the international has TV, and your decision can be made easier than it can at a league match, because you don't always have enough officials to be round the bend watching for infringements. So there's just any other questions for Rob? We can open the floor. If anyone's got anything, you can put your hand up rather than putting it in the chat if you'd like to do that. Anyone? Don't be shy. I say we said it's all about communication, so you know.
While we're waiting for a question, Shona, I'll just apologise for not referencing my learning I got off you for field events while we travelled up and down to Birmingham.
That's okay.
I'll make a note to mention you by name next time.
No. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. It's just the whole thing is just about sharing your experiences, learning from each other. I say if you're traveling down, if you want to travel down the world and European route, then it is multidiscipline. So starting to learn other disciplines is fantastic, and it opens your opportunity. It lets you see athletics as the bigger picture. And if you look at a lot of Rob's appointments, they're call room referees, NTD, different appointments. So it's not always that you're going to get the discipline that you prefer. So you have to be aware of the rules within those other disciplines and be able to apply them as well. So, but if you get a chance, if you've never done a call room before, then try and get that opportunity to go into one. It can be a very worthwhile experience, learning what happens behind the scenes rather than out on the field of play. And that's just as important as any other job within athletics. In fact, sometimes more important, because if the athletes don't get to you, you're waiting for them to arrive. So yeah. So any questions? Anybody got a burning question?
So Sarah's just asked a question, how do you manage your time with all the different calls on it? It must be difficult to maintain the grassroots connection. So I suppose that, how do you kind of, manage that kind of, time, but also I suppose, there is cross references to both kind of the level that you've been working at, Rob, but also grassroots as well, I'm assuming.
How I manage my time is to have a very understanding wife who allows me to go out and do these things. But yeah, you do have to prioritize, what you're doing and when you're doing it. But she's very understanding and allows me to pick up my hobby. And as long as I bring back the coffee sachets from my room or the biscuits from the room I've been staying in, she's delighted. She's wonderfully happy. I'm sure I took her a gift back from Gibraltar last year. I just can't remember what it is at the minute.
Yes, I can't be bribed by biscuits as well, so I'll echo that statement. I think the only point I would add to that is that, we as officials, we're all, learn in different ways, and we all kind of have different strengths, and you don't have to do a certain number of events every year. The clue is in the title. We're a volunteer, and the sport just keeps on giving and giving and giving. And if you have any questions, even if you don't have the questions tonight, even if you have them kind of after the call, then we'll give Rob's contact details and the other home country leads details, and please just bounce things off of us. But also, there is other sources of kind of support out in the wider officials community, whether that be your county official secretaries, your heads of discipline, your area officials associations, or these sessions are part of a wider kind of series of kind of online training sessions that can be downloaded at any time. We are looking to schedule more in over the summer into the autumn. So if you have any topics that you think you would like covered that would support your development, then please just let Shona or I know, and we can look to schedule them in. But any general questions or any kind of comments, I promise none of the three of us bite. I promise you that. But if you have any questions, then please take yourself off mute. Or if we've kind of exhausted you or kind of inspired you to kind of go away and gain additional experiences or just ways on how to further enjoy the sport, then we will send a copy of the recording after this session, along with Rob's presentation, and then just general sources of support that can help your development. Not necessarily to go to the next level, it could be within your current level. But the one thing as an official in the sport myself, I said it 2 or 3 times tonight. We start as a team, we end as a team. If you walk past an official and you see them doing a good job, regardless of whether they've been in the sport for 1 day, 1 hour, 10 years, 200 years, like me, Rob, and Shona, apologies, guys. It doesn't matter. Go and say to that person how well they've done, because it can just mean the difference to them carrying on or progressing or just enjoying the sport more. Val, I see your hand up. Apologies, the floor is yours.
Well, I was just going to ask Rob, as you progressed up, especially to the higher level competitions, were you ever given the opportunity to shadow people at the higher level before you then took the role on at that higher level? Or were you just thrown in at the deep end, so to speak, on the assumption that if you're a level 4 or level 5, then you should know what you're doing?
Good question. The only shadowing experience I remember was shadowing Finley Gallagher as I can't remember what even the role was. And it was one of the management roles. I shadowed Finley at one meeting, but other than that, no. I think it was a case of they watch. I don't know how they make these appointments. To be honest, at management level, I don't know who makes the decision. What do they see in officials to make these appointments? I don't know. I never really worked that out. But no, it's a case of I was appointed. There was support there, but there wasn't any specific shadowing in place before I was appointed into that role. I think with the call room referee role, you start out doing call room at your local level at your Scottish championships, and then the call room role is similar once you get up to UK level, and then you do. Who watched me doing the call room referee at UK level and decided that they'd appoint me as call room referee at 2 World Championships? I don't know, but I must be doing something right. I've just not quite worked out what it is.
Because you're too good at the job, so that's why. But I think just to kind of end things on that, there are opportunities. And if you don't know where those opportunities are, then again, people like Shona, Rob, Val, I know is obviously kind of active on the Scottish front. That there are people that will literally bend over backwards to get you that kind of experience, and people are ready and waiting to offer that support. So if you don't know where that support is, then that's why Shona and I, for example, are in the roles we are to offer that support. But if you have got any questions, last chance. Otherwise, we will bring the session to a close. And if you have any questions afterwards, please don't hesitate to contact us. But honestly, thank you so much for joining this evening, folks. It's been great to see everyone. And have a lovely evening and weekend when it comes.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.